Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name is, of course, Csaw or Chris, and today we're finally talking about the upcoming Guild Wars 2 expansion, The Secrets of the Obscure. And I say finally, but we actually just found out about the official launch of this expansion several weeks ago. At the time, I made a video about the new Fractal that was introduced, and I was like, oh, we'll talk about the new expansion soon, but it comes out really quickly. And I guess that's kind of the magic that Guild Wars 2's done a few times now, is they don't have you wait for like a year or a year and a half between the announcement of an expansion and the actual release. They go pretty quick, and specifically with this one, it's going to be a new expansion format, a lot more lightweight and quicker turnaround, and I guess that they're kind of showing that off by how quickly we're diving right into it. But before we jump into the rest of the conversation here, I should mention I am a Guild Wars 2 or ArenaNet partner. Does this mean I won't say anything bad about Guild Wars 2? No, I'll say the good, I'll say the bad, I'll say the medium. What it does mean, though, is that there are two sponsored or referral links in the description section below. One of them can be used to try out Guild Wars 2 for free, and it supports the channel. The other can be used to purchase Guild Wars 2 expansions, and it also helps the channel. That said, though, let's dive into the conversation about the expansion. So, as mentioned, the expansion comes out later this month, on August 22nd to be specific. My intentions are to stream either on the launch day or that weekend kind of following August 22nd, and try out the expansion, see what's there. I think for what was the most recent one? The End of Dragons expansion, we did several different live streams of the story. That said, I would expect the scope of this expansion to be less than End of Dragons because they've kind of signaled that it should be. So we'll see how many streams it takes us to get through this, but I'm pretty excited to check it out. The expansion itself, like I say, it's called The Secrets of the Obscure, and it's particularly interesting because this is also the kickoff of a whole new story for Guild Wars 2. Who knows if it'll be, multiple expansions long or whatever, but up until now, we've been dealing with Elder Dragons essentially throughout all of Guild Wars 2, but even those who play Guild Wars 1 have been dealing with them in Guild Wars 1 as well. So it's been many years of Elder Dragons, and we do finally have some other stories that are being told. My personal hope is that it is actually just a single expansion story. That's one of my favorite things when I look back to some of the expansions I've played in World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, where there is a story that kind of stands on itself, its own for an expansion. Now, to be clear, both of those have links to a larger overall story at times, and it'll just be fun to have something new, I think, that's not dragon related. That said, there is some dragon related news. I'm kind of going to be jumping all over the place here to talk about some of the features and things we know about this expansion. I should also mention the footage in the background, super not of the new expansion. This is just me going around exploring maps that I need to explore. So if you came here for footage, you'll be disappointed. Stay tuned for the 22nd of August. That's when the new stuff will come. That said, though, like I say, dragon-related news, the Skyscale mount, there's going to be a new acquisition method for this. And for a vast majority of Guild Wars 2 players, that probably doesn't seem super exciting. But for new players or lazy players who have not unlocked their Skyscale, it's pretty exciting, and I am one of those lazy players. So this was not meant to shame people. This is the boat that I fall into, is the people who will hopefully be unlocking Skyscale throughout this expansion. And it makes a lot of sense because the expansion itself has to deal with the Wizard Tower. And for those of you who don't know, and I actually don't know very much apart from a 45-minute Wooden Potatoes video about it, it is a piece of lore that has been pretty mysterious in the world of Guild Wars 2. It's this tower that floats, and you can kind of see it on the map, and it floats. That's what it does. There's some additional details that I'll let Wooden Potatoes give you. Just look up Wooden Potatoes Wizard Tower video. You'll have a much better time. But it's been this weird, obscure piece of lore that's been in the universe of Guild Wars 2 that hasn't had enough detail applied to it over the years. And it's certainly something that Guild Wars 2 has always had as a branch, either for an expansion or possibly a raid when those were like super focused on telling small stories and stuff like that. It was a possibility, and it's really exciting to see it be something that is finally, being talked about. So pretty cool to see. Who knows what will happen. The main reason I bring it up, though, is the tower floats in the sky, so having a sky scaled mount that also helps your character float in the sky is probably pretty essential to gameplay, and I would assume that's why ArenaNet is trying to connect those two items for people. So my assumption is there's going to be a lot of flying. We'll have to see, but it could be cool in the sense that it could be one of the most aerial expansions for Guild Wars 2, which very on theme with, the dragon stuff going on in World of Warcraft. It seems to be the time for flying and dragons and stuff like that. Who knows? Other things that we do know about this, the expansion itself is a lower price point. It's going to be a smaller scope, so we should expect it to be probably a smaller expansion. That just makes a lot of sense. But there are still a lot of really exciting things that are coming. We do know that there are 2 new mastery lines, the Heart of the Obscure and Astral Masteries. I don't know what they really have to do, but they seem to be very tied to the story of the expansion. And we've seen various masteries that have been very tied to, specific Living World episodes or specific Living World seasons in the past that essentially just add more flavor to the gameplay interactions that tie to the lore. I will say, and this is my critical part of this, I've typically preferred masteries that have been completely unconnected to the story in the past. And I don't mean like they don't make sense in the world. I mean like they're just not super tied to the story for very specific reasons, and are more used for a variety of different things. The ones I'm talking about here are like gliding or mounts. These are, mastery lines that just bring a whole new level of functionality to Guild Wars 2 and, don't really matter too much to the story. Yes, they're used in different parts of the story and stuff like that, but they are exciting even if they had no story tie-ins, is what I'm saying. Whereas some of the Living World masteries are not very exciting if they had no story tie-in whatsoever. So we'll see where these lie. I am going to guess that these are more like the camp that I don't love, that they're very tied into the story and maybe less exciting gameplay-wise, but we'll see what happens. So those are coming. The big thing, though, and this is the question that a lot of people had on their minds, is what they were going to do about elite specializations. Because whenever you look at a Guild Wars 2 expansion in the past, elite specs are a pretty big part of it, both in terms of what the player gets from the expansion, but also, I'm sure, in terms of resources that need to be dedicated to the expansion, because we're essentially building out a new version of each of the classes. It's a subsection of the class, but it's still a pretty big lift, I'm sure, on the ArenaNet side. So really balancing out that effort and value is probably the toughest question here. And so what are they doing? Well, they are finally dabbling in an area that I've made several videos about this over the many years that I've been covering Guild Wars 2. They're dabbling with weapons, which is super exciting. The first part that will come as the actual expansion launches is something called Weapon Master Training. What this does is it very simply, but very powerfully, allows you to use any of the previous elite spec weapons as kind of a base weapon for your spec. So, you'll look back and you'll be able to use a longbow on a guardian as a firebrand or something like that. So the amount of customization that unlocks is crazy, and is really cool for theory crafting and stuff like that. Is big question mark for balancing. Now, I've been so removed from the end game of Guild Wars 2 that I actually don't know where the balancing's at and stuff like that. But I have to imagine that introducing this many combinations all at once is going to be tricky. I think this probably overshadows, I should say, new elite specs, because this is just a whole bunch of different ways to use current things that are in the game. So pretty crazy, pretty exciting though. I'm super excited to see what happens. They've also mentioned though in a future update that they will be adding weapons that do exist in the game to specs that have never been able to use them before. So this is pretty exciting as well. And very simply, one of the key elements that is usually released in an elite spec is granting access to a weapon that a class hasn't been able to use. The ones we do know are coming are the Guardian getting the pistol, the Revenant getting the Scepter, the Warrior getting the Staff, Engineer getting the Short Bow, Ranger getting the Mace, Thief getting the Axe, Elementalist getting the Pistol, Mesmer getting the Rifle, and Necromancer getting the Sword. Now, these are particularly interesting, and I'd say there's a wide range here where some of these seem really exciting to me, and some of these feel less exciting to me. For instance, and some people probably feel completely opposite to me, but a Thief getting an Axe is not super exciting because I already feel like they have a lot of weapons that are like melee, short range weapons. Like it's just gonna feel kind of the same in my mind, but I'm also not like a Thief hype person, so I'm probably not the best to ask. Whereas the Thief getting the Rifle was like, oh, that's super new. But yeah, the ones that are really exciting out of this list for me are things like the Warrior getting the Staff. I think is very interesting because there's a lot of, I'd say, different gameplay method, like styles that they could go down there. And then the Mesmer getting the Rifle is pretty interesting, and the Elementalist getting the Pistol. I think those ones are the most unique for me. And I am interested to see how they play out. Of them all, though, I think I would be the most excited to play the Warrior with the Staff. And it's been a while since I've played a Warrior, so I could definitely see myself leaning into that. It is stated that this is a future update, so I don't think this will happen as the expansion launches, but be another breath of fresh air, you know, within the year of content. And realistically, if they have the Weapons Master thing at the start of this that unlocks all of the previously locked elite spec weapons for the spec, and then this new set of weapons come online like halfway through the year, it's a pretty big amount of content that they have planned out already, and that's just talking about the weapon and gameplay stuff. Once again, balancing could be up in the air for this whole year, who knows. I have all the faith in the world that it'll work out, but it could be a lot. So let's talk about some other stuff here. We've got content that is being confirmed. Obviously, there is story content like new living world stuff, new maps. That's a given. But they do specifically state 2 new strike missions and a Fractal of the Mist, each with a challenge mode coming. So they are very much doubling down on the type of content we should expect, and I think at this point it has been pretty clear that it's strikes and fractals. That seems to be what they are most comfortable with. This video does not need to be bogged down with my preference for raids. It's, you know, it's a thing of the past. I don't need to get super involved with it. But yeah, so pretty exciting. I'm excited to play the the strikes and the fractals. The most recent fractal they introduced was kind of like a strike, and I hope that the fractal that is coming is much more like a dungeon than the last strike was. So we'll see what comes of that, but I would say the community as a whole, but myself included, wasn't super thrilled with the most recent fractal that came. There was some really cool elements, don't get me wrong, but we need more dungeon-like content in Guild Wars 2, and I'm excited for that. The other things that we do know are coming are rewards. There's something called the Wizard Vault. I immediately have horrific Great Vault vibes from the name. That I don't think is where this is going, though. It's called the new daily login / daily achievement system. And to be fair, it's kind of a clunky system. Like, they're 2 systems that they're trying to merge into one. And if done properly, will add a lot of value to gameplay, because obviously, one of their key metrics, and most MMOs' key metrics, is daily logins, like getting people a maximum amount of different users to log in on a daily cadence. That's a key KPI in a lot of these situations, and having a system that encourages that is only good. As a player, it is really nice to have something to, you know, just log in and do for a very quick period of time. It is, of course, nice to have these longer term goals as well, like if it's, you know, a weekly set of raids or fractals or something, that's fun as well. But having something you can do each day is really fun, and having it be something that's not so big that you feel like you're missing out if you're gone is also crucial. So I'm really excited to see how it plays out. The current system is kind of like, it's cumbersome in 2 ways. First, the daily login is very simple, but is kind of meh, because you just like log in and you push, okay, I've logged in on this calendar date, and that's kind of the end of it. It's, you know, it is rewarding in the sense once you get to the end, there's a lot of really good ones, but it's not super engaging. Whereas the daily achievement one is quite interesting, but a little complex maybe to get to. Especially if you were a new player coming into the game, you might not know exactly how the system works or how to find out what you should be doing that day and stuff like that. So it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out, and I am excited that they are working on core systems still. The last one that I want to talk about for this video is a new set of legendary armor. Legendary armor, it's been a really long time since they've touched this topic. It was Heart of Thorns, I believe. Yeah, Wing 4 Heart of Thorns that this was released, and it was very much tied to Wing 4 of the raid. I do have legendary armor on my character. I went through the process of doing this. At the time, I played Guild Wars 2 not only as my main game, but as my main PvE endgame MMO, where I would raid every week. It was incredibly rewarding and engaging when I did it. I will go on record, I say this all the time. Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns raids was maybe my favorite raiding I've ever done in any game ever. It just was really, really fun while it lasted. But that aside, this new set of legendary armor is specifically, it says in the description, not focused on a heavy raid requirement or competitive experiences. And I have to agree, they have one that is extremely linked to those, sources. So it would make sense to have a way to get legendary armor that doesn't require you to raid. That just makes sense in so much of the game. Not only in the fact that it's turned away from raids, but that there are so many different ways to earn other legendary weapons that aren't PvE endgame focused. So I think that's a really good decision. Any new armor set is always cool, and there are other armor sets that are coming, to be clear. I was just really drawn to this. It'll be cool to see if they have a similar kind of like different unveil effect when you whip them. I don't know. I'm always excited to see what legendary stuff Guild Wars 2 does. I think their legendary weapons and armors are they're just the best in a lot of situations. But yeah, there we go. That's the summary of the expansion. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard some of this at different points online. But I was really excited to talk a bit about it. I'm very excited for the expansion. I obviously will be buying it. It's just interesting. It's an interesting time for Guild Wars 2 whenever they're trying to do something new, and that happens quite a bit for them. So hopefully this new method of doing expansions, this new scope, works really well for players, really well for developers, and we just have many, many years to come of a new small expansion each year that's really exciting. That's the dream for everyone, I think, in this scenario, and hopefully that happens. But as I said, stay tuned for a live stream date to come at the end of the month, either on the 22nd or a little bit after, where we'll go and check out the new content together. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.